There's a lesson that today's guest learned at just 5 years old from her Haitian grandmother with nothing but a jump rope and a moment of choice.
And that was the first time I realized you should not let people take your voice away from you, your identity, or your jump rope, because it's yours.
And that lesson, it became the foundation for everything that she teaches today. Dr. Sabine Charles is a fraud investigator turned internal auditor turned executive coach. She's a hypnotherapist, a TEDx speaker, and the creator of the MeQ leadership framework. Her work sits at the intersection of emotional intelligence, persuasion, and self-mastery, and she has spent decades helping people to do one thing: get out of their own way. In this conversation, Sabine gets honest about what it actually takes to change someone's mind. Whether you're in a boardroom, a tough conversation, or a relationship, she explains why understanding yourself first is the only real starting point.
But to be removed from ourselves and look at ourselves as an external person or an external being, you start looking at yourself holistically. That's the first step.
She breaks down why performance anxiety disappears the moment you stop making it all about yourself.
You have to remember it's not all about you. It's a service. If you go in thinking you're providing a service to the person in front of you, then your nervousness disappears.
And she challenges the idea that being authentic gives you a pass to stay exactly as you are. This conversation is equal parts practical and deeply personal. Sabine doesn't just teach this stuff, she lives it, she tests it, and she shows up to prove it every single day. If you're ready to stop reacting and start leading from the inside out, this one's for you. This episode is brought to you by Granola, Shopify, HomeServe, and whatnot. If you want to stay fully present in every meeting while still walking away with clear, structured notes, try Granola. Try it free for 3 months at granola.ai/Kwame. If you own a home, HomeServe administers plans that cover the repairs your regular insurance doesn't. Plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and more. Enroll today for 50% off your first year at homeserve.com/Kwame. If you're building a business or just looking to sell more, Whatnot is the largest live shopping marketplace in the country. Download the Whatnot app today and get free shipping on your first order. Just search WHATNOT Whatnot in the App Store and start scoring amazing deals. Ready to launch or grow your business? Start with Shopify, the commerce platform behind millions of entrepreneurs worldwide. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/Kwame. So here, let me challenge you, because let's assume that a lot of folks don't know what it is that you do, don't know what being an auditor means and things like that. Maybe we could ground them in a story, like a juicy one. One of the stories that you would tell at night over drinks.
Internal audit, it's not necessarily about creativity. It's an ability to analyze information, come up with recommendations so that business leaders make decisions. So basically, we're convincing people to change their minds. That's what an auditor does. Because you have an individual who's already working and doing that 9 to 5 or the number of hours he or she is doing it. And you're coming in as an expert of process, risk, controls. Now your job is to convince the person to change their minds, to do something different. And a lot of times auditors don't necessarily focus on the human element. They focus on the technical piece of the process, people, and technology. This is what we always talk about: process, people, and technology. And we tend to focus on the process and the technology, and the people, they'll just follow suit. And that's why it's interesting, because at many times in my career, I used to be a fraud investigator, not only an internal auditor, but also a fraud investigator. And we have to interview people. And they spend hours talking to the individual, trying to figure out what they've done. I just walk in and all of a sudden they spill everything. And they come back, my colleagues used to say, what did you do? How did you have this person feel so comfortable to tell you everything? They call my office 42nd Street, not because of other certain things, but because people come in the office and they just spill the beans. And I started thinking to myself, what is that? Because often my bosses, my colleagues ask me, how do people feel so comfortable telling you things that they've done wrong? And that was the beginning of the journey of leadership MEQ: mindset, emotional intelligence, and leadership qualities. There were many avenues that led to this framework. But if you talk about internal audit, my career, that's where it kind of moved me into that space. We could talk about the hypnotherapy as well, which is a very interesting story. But those components is what led me to where I am today.
Incredible. This is great. That was better than a story. So let's talk about how you got people to spill the beans, because we can't just like tease the audience with that. Because when it comes to fraud investigations, I know there are a lot of different things that run through people's minds. But if you could give us an idea of what type of fraud you were investigating, and then what you did actually in the moment to get people to admit to things that perhaps they would have been in their best interest not to share with you.
It's at the emotional intelligence level. You have to first understand the person who's in front of you. And based on that, then you could communicate on their level. That's the technique. So the first couple of seconds, I assess. Like my friend up here, we were talking in French and Spanish a few minutes ago. He'll always remember me. So there's the connection that you make. And it's not manipulative. It's actually genuine because I was genuinely interested in what he was saying. And so going in, not necessarily on the defense, going back to the auditor, or trying to be right all the time, we go in and to understand what is the other person's point of view and where do they sit, and then meet them where they are. And that's the E in MEQ. We also have a survey that we provide our clients so that they can measure their emotional intelligence level. And then based on that, we work on certain key things that you're interested in. And you have a session with three sessions with a coach, and they work towards elevating your EQ, because that is something you can learn. You learn it. I learned it very early in my career at 5 with my grandmother she's from Haiti. And I learned it very, very early. And I talk about this in my TEDx talk, where it was about when I was a kid at 5. My grandmother, she watched us because my parents were working, living the American dream, working 3 jobs, And she was the caregiver. She didn't speak English. She spoke Haitian Creole. And I had friends and I had a jump rope. And I always walked around with this jump rope. And she noticed when we were outside, I wasn't really interested in hanging out with grandma. I wanted to hang out with the girls who were in the complex. I went there. She kind of said, okay, go play with them. I went and played with the young girls. Then seconds later, I came back crying because the girls stole my jump rope. They stole my jump rope. And my grandmother looked at me and while my brother was there translating, and she looked at me and she goes, you better go get your rope or else you're going to really find out what crying is about. And that just snapped something in me, which caused me to realize, oh, I better get my jump rope because I'm afraid of grandmama. So I went, grabbed my jump rope. The kids were like, whoa, they've never seen me so determined in my life. And I came back and I held the jump rope like a trophy to my grandma. And she just kind of just moved her head like, hmm. And that was it. And that was the first time I realized you should not let people take your voice away from you, your identity, or your jump rope, because it's yours. That was my first lesson. Again, going back to leadership MEQ. I had multiple things in my life that has that have caused me to be and understand and share this framework with the world. Because it wasn't something was created in a lab. It was not only because I did my dissertation on this, I also lived it. And that combination of really understanding the process and research, then also under having live experiences, that combination is what makes it so user friendly and relatable. Because first you have to figure out who you are, then understand who with whom you're dealing, and then the other things, the qualities or techniques that are all learnable.
Right. Oh, this is good because especially when you, and I'm sure you've probably had this experience where you interact with somebody like the fraud example is one, but just in general, your ability to communicate with so many different types of people, different types of background. And people might look at you and it might seem like a magic trick. There's a specific je ne sais quoi that you have, but that's your accumulated experience. But then also the level of intentional learning that you've done, and everything boils into what you are today. So it sounds like there's a lot that is based in your personal history and experience and explicit study. And so when you're teaching people, when you're coaching people, helping them to connect, helping them to persuade, helping them to manage folks' emotions, how do you make sure that they develop their skills while at the same time staying rooted in their authentic identity so they don't lose their personal je ne sais quoi?
Did you look at my framework? I have a photo. This is great. Around this framework I have, which is MEQ, there's a circle. And in that circle, it says innovation, self reflection, and core values. Those are the three things that makes me and you and everyone else unique. Our being innovative, self-reflective, and our core values. Now, I like to say we need to always be an external observer of ourselves for inner growth. We tend to look inward, like we're self-absorbed. But to be removed from ourselves and look at ourselves as an external person or an external being, that's where meditation comes in, right? So you start looking at yourself holistically. That's the first step. What am I doing to prevent me from getting what I want? Do I really want this? Am I wanting this because everyone tells me that I should get it? Is it my ego that's being fed? So the internal observer of yourself is it's for you to really. I actually helped before doing EQ, leadership EQ. I used to train people to pass certification exams through TAPA Institute. And many times people want to get certified because they want to get promoted in their job. Mostly the CPA, certified public accountant, or CIA, which is certified internal auditors, those type of exams, certified fraud examiner, those exams. And I always ask my clients first 5 minutes of the conversation, why do you want this? Why? You're going to spend hours of your life crying, and they usually break down crying too during this session. Just really, why do you want this? Because they failed so many times. They come to me after failing a few times because I analyze how they process information and then I teach them on their level. So to the point where I have a comic book and I have a movie about teaching the CPA audit part of the exam, which is going to come out this year. And it's going to be on YouTube. We're going to actually put it out every Wednesday at a certain time so people could kind of see. Not only I'm helping the people who are my focus group, but I believe that everyone can learn from each other. This is why I'm putting it out there. You don't have to be an auditor to appreciate and understand what I'm talking about. So the first thing I do is understand the person in front of me. That's number one. Because everyone comes in with a unique core values, innovation, and self reflection. Before I could apply that framework, I need to understand what and who you are.
This is so good because when you think about different frameworks that people would apply, so we have your coaching methodology, we have different conflict resolution frameworks. Like for me, it's compassionate curiosity. In order to make that work, you have to be able to aim. You have to be able to understand the person because even though the core framework will be the same, the application and the way that you communicate it to the other person will be different based on the input that you get. And when you think about persuasion, a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with data, we often make the mistake of trying to persuade too soon, where we're in a situation where we say, okay, I've done all the research, I've got the right answer, and now I'm going to provide the right answer. And now you will have the right answer, and then you're going to be on the same page just like me. And then we are shocked when that doesn't work. And so the necessity of taking the time to understand the other side deeply is crucial in any framework, anything that you're trying to do. Now, the thing is, I think most people when they listen to that, they'll say, okay, yeah, I understand the value of understanding. But this might sound a little bit meta. But what is it that people don't understand about what it is that you mean when you say you need to understand other people?
When you were talking, it made me realize some of the things that we often do as auditors, as risk managers, right? We spend hours researching things and we come up with the right answer.
You know what's fascinating to me? The most effective negotiators and the most effective sellers have one thing in common. They make the other person feel seen. And that's exactly what's happening on Whatnot and why this platform is growing the way it is. Whatnot is the largest dedicated live shopping marketplace in the country. You go live, you show your products in real time, buyers ask questions and you answer them, and they keep on coming back. Not because of a listing algorithm, but because of a real connection. What's really compelling about the model is the scale that it creates. Sellers on Whatnot are moving 10 times more product than on other major platforms. The number of people hitting over $1 million a year has doubled, and buyers spend more than an hour a day in the app. Beauty, collectibles, electronics, luxury, fashion, full categories, full communities, all happening live. If you're building a business or looking to start one, this is really worth paying attention to. Download the Whatnot app today and get free shipping on your first order. Just search Whatnot, WHATNOT, in the App Store and start scoring amazing deals. Picture this. It's late at night. You're scrolling and you find that thing that you've been meaning to buy. You add it to your cart, you hit checkout, and then you realize that your wallet is all the way across the room. But that's when you see it, that purple button with all of your information already saved. One tap and you're done. That button is Shop Pay, and it's just one reason why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses worldwide and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. Whether you're just starting out or scaling up, Shopify gives you everything you need in one place. Inventory, payments, analytics, shipping, returns, no jumping between platforms, no chaos. And Shopify doesn't just sell you, it helps you to get found. With easy-to-run email and social media campaigns, you can reach your customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Plus, their 24/7 support means that you're never figuring it out alone. See fewer abandoned carts and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. Go to shopify.com/Kwame. That's shopify.com/Kwame.
Quote, the right answer. Now, what I think is missing, and again, it goes back to my research, is that the world has changed. The leadership books that we've read were in or set in environments where people came to the office. It's set in environments where we looked in each other's eyes and we could read someone's emotions or body language. So when I say understanding, now we don't have those cues. We don't have, or they're a little bit different. We cannot use our senses to know if I'm leaning back, that I'm kind of just off put. I just don't feel like I want to hear you. But I may be leaning back in my chair in the Zoom meeting because I just want to be relaxed. So the cues may be a little bit different. That's the learning. So adjusting and being flexible enough, that growth, people like to throw a growth mindset, yeah, but being aware. It's actually being aware and saying, that curiosity, to use your words, am I clear? Am I reading the room correctly? And the room now is a Zoom room or whatever platform people are using. Now, how do you develop relationships when you have work environments that's your bedroom, right? Or your living room? And someone else is across in different countries and cultural differences. The way I do it when I work is by having one-on-one conversations with them, 15 minutes. So when I am in my auditor's role, because I run the chief audit executive, I am a chief audit executive for an entity. What I do is I have meetings with the leaders just to say hello. And they have outdoor activities, meaning they have parties to celebrate things. Attend. That's your opportunity. You gotta attend. Bar mitzvahs. I'm not Jewish. Go. Eid. Go. If they invite, then go. Because that's that human interaction. That's that friendship. When something happens and when you need to be in front of them and convince them about a process, then it becomes easier for them to accept your recommendations.
A couple of things that I want to dig into here, Sabine, because this has been a masterclass. Because you were asking yourself during these conversations, am I being clear? And the only way for us to know if we're being clear is if we can understand the other side. And here's what I mean. Because we might be able to communicate in a way where somebody that knows us or somebody else might consider it clear. We ourselves might consider that we are being clear. But the only person who could determine the clarity of our message is the recipient of the message. And the thing is, especially when you are in a technical field talking to somebody who is not technical, we have the issue of ego, but not in the way that is obvious. Because if you're speaking in a technical type of way, in a way that is clear to you, you might stop and pause and say, hey, am I making sense to the other person? Now, the answer, truthfully, might be no. But they might say yes because they don't want to look stupid. Right? And so you have to go beyond the words of what the person is actually saying to be able to read the body language and see if there is a bit of a lack of understanding. And that won't always be obvious unless you're taking the time to pay attention. And the other thing too, you talked about the importance of just showing up, having small one-on-ones. We're not talking about 90-minute meetings, just quick touch bases. This serves multiple purposes because number one, we are investing in the relationship bank account. We're creating these natural, organic opportunities for positive interactions that builds trust, that builds warmth, that builds closeness. And now we have the other strategic angle of it too, because you're downloading data. What does this person look like at rest? What does it look like when they're feeling confident, when they're feeling secure, when they understand what I'm saying? And then when we have a conversation of consequence, we can pay attention to those deviations from the baseline. Okay, that body language I saw, that's not typical for them. They said they got it. Let me just circle back and approach it from a different way to make sure, and so this is the the expert nuance that you're bringing here, because it's not just about the persuasion and the data and everything. It's about understanding the person on a much deeper level, and we can see how that amplifies our persuasion and communication too.
And as we want people to do something different, and I'm going to go back to the profession that I love, and I want you to love internal auditors too. He smiles. All right. So I'm going to use your example. You said that, okay, the person, you explained something technical, and the person in front of you is saying, yeah, I get it. But deep in their heart, they're like, what are they saying? I like to follow up with a question. I like to say, well, now that you and I are on the same page, how do you think, what's your suggestion on getting the team to digest this recommendation? That's usually my follow-up question, because that opens up an opportunity for the person to start asking, oh yeah, well, we should do this and that. And I'm like, oh, but maybe, because then I start listening and I could hear if he or she really understands the recommendation or the change I want them to implement in their area. So the follow-up questions are critical, because people are like, yeah, yeah, I understand. Half of the time, people, especially on your online, people are checking their emails, or their phone is ringing. Who knows what's happening behind the scenes of that screen on their Zoom call? There may be chaos. So knowing that, I like to always follow up with a question. So how do we think we could have John implement this process? Because especially that most of the time I'm speaking to the senior leaders in the organization, and they're not the ones who are implementing the process. So of conveying it and to having that conversation, so that way I really get that buy-in. Say, oh, maybe I should bring in John. Perfect. So that's how.
This is good. This is great. And when I think about your background, again, it is so rich because we have the educational background, we have the cultural background, we have fraud, we have internal auditing and everything. But then we have hypnotherapy. So tell us about that, because I think when people think about hypnotherapy, they think about the stage hypnosis, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bring this back down to what it is that you actually do, and the benefit it could have for folks.
Well, let me tell you first, I love my birthdays. Every year, my birthday is like a holiday. Okay. So every year I do something different. I I say, what country I have not visited, what new thing I could try. I looked online and I saw hypnotherapy. I was like, okay, I'll try it. And it says that you could use hypnotherapy to lose weight. I was like, hey, that's a win-win. I try something new and I could lose weight. Perfect. So I went to a hypnotherapy session and I started talking, and they shared with me what is hypnotherapy. And it's basically you're talking to your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is where you really sit. The conscious mind is things that you've been programmed or been traumatized, and your defense mechanism is where that lies. And hypnotherapy is when the therapist speaks to your subconscious mind directly by putting you into a trance, and they work with what should be said. It's not I come up with the phrases. So she got me relaxed and helped me understand the connection of what I was with food, or food was my thing, right? So that's why I went there to understand and help me figure out calmly and talk to my Sabine, the true Sabine, the subconscious level, for me to not use food as a crutch. That is what, so now fast forwarding to how I use it in my work. I was like, this is fascinating. I was losing weight. I was feeling good. And I was like, all of this, no drugs. It's all your mind. And I was trying to pass the certification exam. And I said, maybe I could use it to help me pass this exam because I was getting anxiety over this exam. Guess what? It worked. And I said, I'm going to learn how to do this. I learned from my hypnotherapist. I went through the course. I took the exams. I practiced how to do it. And now I implement it into helping people self hypnotize and for exam anxiety. That's what I do. And so I use that technique, and this is why I have such a high pass rate in my one of my businesses, which is Tapa Institute, where the CPA exam across the nation is around 48% pass rate. My clients, 85%. Because we don't only help you with the material and I teach you on your level, but also I teach you to understand the answer is within you. The answer is within you. And we just have to tap it. Tap it. So I used my hypnotherapy knowledge in not only in helping people pass certification exams, but training them to become more empowered, have their voice better heard, and also my fellow auditors to communicate and help change minds to implement processes in organizations.
Incredible. And first of all, congratulations, kudos, because that
Thank you.
pass rate is astronomical. That's really important. And it also shows the discrepancy between what you know and then what you could do in the moment. Because performance anxiety holds you back from being the best version of yourself when it matters most. And you can study, and learn everything you need, and it still might not be good enough if you can't perform in the moment. Same is true with tough conversations too, where you're in a situation where you, after the fact, isn't it interesting how after the conversation we can remember what it is that we should have been saying after the conversation, but in the middle of it, our mind goes blank. And so when it comes to addressing performance anxiety in conversations, what advice do you have for our audience who might need to convey very technical messages in a persuasive way in a high stakes environment like internal auditors? Because you're helping folks make very, very high level decisions with data. So, how do we make sure that our performance anxiety doesn't get in the way of having the conversation effectively?
Remembering it's not all about you.
Owning a home is amazing until it's not. One minute everything's fine, and the next you're dealing with a burst pipe, a furnace that stopped working in January, or an electrical issue that just came out of nowhere. And here's the thing, your regular homeowner's insurance, it usually doesn't cover that. The day-to-day wear and tear, plumbing failures, HVAC breakdowns, electrical issues, you're often on your own. And that's where HomeServe comes in. Think of it like a subscription for your home. For as little as $4.99 a month, HomeServe administers plans that have your back when things go wrong. When something on your plan breaks down, you call their 24/7 hotline and they handle scheduling a repair with a local experienced licensed professional, no panicked contractor search, and no scrambling. HomeServe has been helping homeowners like you for over 20 years, and they have a trusted network of over 2,600 local contractors, nearly 4.5 million customers, a 4.8 out of 5 post-repair rating, and an A-plus Better Business Bureau rating. So if I ever needed this, and honestly, every homeowner eventually does, HomeServe is exactly what I'd use. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe and enroll today for 50% off your first year. Go to homeserve.com/Kwame. That's homeserve.com/Kwame to enroll today for 50% off. As a negotiator, presence is everything. The moment your attention splits, even for something productive like capturing every word of a conversation, you lose ground. And for a long time, that was the real tension in high-stakes meetings. I felt like I could either be fully in the conversation or I could make sure nothing fell through the cracks. Granola ended that trade-off. Granola is an AI powered notepad built for people who want to perform at their best in every meeting. And here's how it works. You take your own notes, the way that you normally would, capturing what matters to you, and in the background, Granola securely transcribes the whole meeting. And when it's over, it brings everything together into clean, structured, actually useful notes. What was decided, who owns what, and what comes next. And because Granola works through your device's audio, it integrates seamlessly into whatever video conferencing tool that you're already using. No new setup, no extra apps jumping into your call. It works alongside you, invisibly. The first time I used it, I noticed something almost immediately. I was more engaged, asking sharper questions, listening more strategically. Because I wasn't splitting my focus, I was fully present. Granola isn't there to think for you. It's there so you can think better. If you want to show up sharper in every meeting, try Granola free for 3 months at granola.ai/Kwame. That's granola.ai/Kwame to get your time back. Get 3 months free at granola.ai/Kwame.
You have to remember it's not all about you. It's a service. If you go in thinking you're providing a service to the person in front of you, then your nervousness disappears. If you're defending your inadequacies, or I don't know if I'm saying the words correctly, English is not my first language, I don't know if I'm sounding stupid, they have, or whatever, you're shutting down your flow, your energy. And so if you think about, all right, what is the message? What I do, I actually posted about this on my LinkedIn recently because every day I do posts on techniques on how to deal with life. And one of my things I posted is when you go into a meeting, you shouldn't try. It's great. Get your documents ready. Get your documents ready. However, you need to audit your mindset. And you have to start thinking, what is the mission of the person who's going to be at this meeting? What is their mindset of that person? What is my mindset? And do I hate this person? And if I'm going to go for the jugular, you got to talk yourself out. I talk myself out of a lot of things in my life. This is another recent post. Listen to this, and this is personal. I put it out there anyway. My daughter didn't invite me to her own graduation. And I paid for her education. Though I give her kudos, she finished in 2.5 years. Beautiful. Guess what? How would you feel? You kind of, okay. The breathing.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. So to answer your question, I had to check myself. So guess what? I went anyway. I got my own ticket. I went anyway. Because what I realized is that I had to live in my character. Celebrate a day of accomplishment. Her behavior has nothing to do with me. Tough lesson. I am the patient and the teacher in that same situation. And so I went, I celebrated, though it was mixed emotions. So when you have these situations, when you're in the moment, yeah, you're going to have feelings, acknowledge them, take a deep breath, and really figure out what is my core value. So I went, we celebrated, she's done.
Wow.
That's the answer to your question.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for sharing. That can't be easy, but it gave you an opportunity to, like you said, live your values. Because if I take this all the way back, when we think about the core values, innovation, everything, and that we've been talking about. And then also the reality that you have to focus on the needs of other people. And sometimes when we look at ourselves and we become that internal observer, we recognize that some of the things that we want to say or do would be counterproductive. And that's something interesting to explore too, Sabine, because we hear so many people talk about authenticity, right? Be yourself. And some people say, take it as a license to just do whatever they want. And
Or
they
say whatever they want.
say whatever. It's like, well, I'm just being me. It's like, you are verbally abusive. Maybe you should change it, right? Maybe you should pull it back. So how in these moments, how do you check yourself? Because it's easy for us to just say, check yourself. But the actual internal work that's required to do that in the moment is extremely difficult, because it can feel like you're not just checking yourself, you can feel like you're sacrificing yourself in the moment. So how do you put your ego aside and focus on the other person when you are feeling so strongly?
Training. It's like going to the gym. Are you going to lift that 100-pound weight the first day? Maybe you could hurt yourself. Or you start out small. Every conversation is an opportunity to train. I train myself every morning. I meditate twice a day. I sit here and I check myself. It's not easy. Not easy. Not to talk about politics in life. It's not easy. So as we live in an environment that is constantly changing, not only through social issues, but also with AI, this job insecurity, forget about food insecurity, job insecurity.
Right.
We have to, again, in that wheel of mine, I talk about continuous learning. I talk about character. I talk about self-care. Mental, physical, social. That's that wheel. That's that leadership MEQ. And it's not just working on one thing. Guess what? We are not one-dimensional. So we have to work on it. You
Yes.
come through in everything you do. So if you eat poorly, you must be doing something else in that same kind of mindset. And that's where the hypnotherapy comes in. Because the pathway of behavior is basically been etched in your mind from very young, or from whatever trauma or traumatic. I call it trauma because life is traumatic. That's my interpretation. Take it for what it is. Those moments that developed you. Now, understanding that not every situation requires the same reaction. And so when you know your triggers, and my daughter knows my triggers, I have to take a step back. It's called mental gymnastics in a sense. You're really working that muscle for you to, and I'm from the West Indies. That's like not even heard of. So I was just like, this is but after I calmed myself down, then I started laughing. I was like, this girl has a lot of hoopsa. Like, I don't know. I was like, good for her. I was like, God, that. I was like, that's a good characteristics to be so gutsy. Good for
Yeah.
her.
As a child of Caribbean immigrants, I endorse what you just said. It is, and you see Simone here busting up from Venezuela. These are new things, and it's hard to hit a target that you don't know exists. I remember after being on Mel Robbins, somebody sent me a message and he said, I did not know that I could control my emotions. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know it was possible. And what's interesting is that for people who listen to the podcast, for people who study leadership, when
Mhm.
we think about emotional intelligence, we are at least conscious of it. Whether or not we practice it is a completely different thing. But we often take for granted just how well known these concepts are. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to dig into, which is the brilliant response that you had, is training is how you're able to manage yourself in these tough conversations, in these tough situations. And the thing is, when you think about training, some people will almost give themselves an out and say, well, training is expensive. I don't have time to do the training. Well, life's going to give you plenty of opportunities to train these skills. And when you start to think about life as the ultimate training ground, then you recognize that you have opportunities to practice not just every day, just every moment of every day in different ways. And if you can start to think of yourself as somebody who is constantly in training, then you're going to start to get that level of mastery. And that's the thing. When you think about the 10,000 hour rule when it comes to achievement of
Yeah.
mastery, it's
Mhm.
10,000 hours of deliberate practice.
Yeah.
And it's not going to count, it's not going to work unless you are training with intentionality. What did I do well? I'm going to try to replicate that. What did I do poorly? Let me figure out why I did that poorly and try to do something differently in the future. And it's just constantly doing that. And what's interesting, and tell me if this resonates with you too, Sabine, because you'll recognize it's almost like a video game. All right, level one used to be challenging, and now you can handle it. And then you get to level two and level three, and then you realize that life is just full of infinite levels of emotion management.
Mhm.
And so it's always going to be challenging. There's always going to be something to learn. But then when you take the moment and you have the self awareness to say, hold on, where am I currently? Where was I last year? At this moment when something like this would have happened. Oh, you know what? I would have thrown a plate against the wall. I would have freaked out. This is much better. And we have to celebrate those small wins because that gives us the motivation to continue to improve.
Exactly. This is why I posted that story on my LinkedIn because I realized that, yeah, my reaction would have been a little bit different if I were not practicing my framework. And I want to share, again, life is full of lemons. You have to make lemonade or sometimes trade those lemons for something else. And you have to realize that this is a training ground and you have to sometimes do a timeout. Timeout. I take vacation and my husband doesn't like this, but I tell him, I said, I need vacation 3 times a year, at least. And one vacation is on my own. He's like, why? Why would you want? I was like, nah. It's not like I need to go in. Well, I usually go away to a quiet place. But the thing is, I need to be by myself. Relaxation and doing a timeout is essential for your development. And that's how you could go back in the game. It's just like with any sport. If you do, I used to be a weightlifter back in the day, right? Yeah. And the thing is that you need rest days. Every muscle is trained differently. You need rest days. If you keep training, you're going to strain yourself or your muscles are not going to build the way it should be built. Like your cell phone, you cannot plug your cell phone 24/7 because the battery will eventually start draining. I give examples that people could relate because a lot of times, and especially in doing research, there's a lot of technical jargon and it makes it unattainable for people. And my desire is to help people understand this is attainable. It's not something that you do once and you put on the shelf. This is part of your DNA. It has to be if you want to improve. It's not a 30-day challenge, 60-day challenge. Let's do this, a trend. This is it. And if you want constant, you want to have your voice, your visibility, and your value for yourself, and the world will see it. The world will see it. And this is where leadership starts from within. And we hear these terms all the time, but it's one step at a time. And if you have kids, they are your challenge.
Every
Why
day.
did you think spaghetti would be great on the ceiling? Like, they give you your challenges.
Every single day. Yes. Oh, this is so great. And I want to bring in Simone, who's been listening patiently. Simone, what is on your mind?
Well, you are an expert on feedback too. One of the books that you've written is about feedback. And this is something I struggle being in a different culture. I struggle with that because people from Venezuela or from South America, they give and receive feedback in a very different way. I was lucky when I started to work with Kwame because he knows where I come from. So he says, "Hey, this is wrong, this is right. Let's work." So to me, it's clear, easy, and direct. So that's why we create a good team. We make a good team. But here in Canada, feedback is a lot less direct. So I struggle a lot and I don't know how to properly give feedback. And I don't understand when I receive feedback because sometimes when they say, this is not my favorite thing, they're saying, I hate it.
I like it.
And I understand this is not my favorite. Oh, maybe it's your second favorite or your third favorite. But no, they hate it. So, how, for a person who comes from outside of this culture, come from the Caribbean, how can I adjust my way of giving and receiving feedback?
Very interesting. So now I'm going to just talk about the word feedback, first of all.
Ooh.
Okay. And I'll be happy to respond. I'll respond to your question. Feedback is not positive or negative. Feedback is someone's opinion. Clear. Feedback is not I'm going to give you feedback. That's my opinion. So now the recipient, you could take it or you could leave it. Those are your choices in life. So when we start framing feedback clearly, then now let's answer the question. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay? So it's not positive or negative. It's up to you how you interpret it. Now, let's flip it. So now they're telling you said something very interesting. You realized when they say, that's not my favorite, that means they hate it. So you're already understanding their language. As a person who English is not my first language either. It's not. You may not hear the accent, but I do have accents. And English is my third language. There is always a gap of a comprehension because we're either translating or we have a cultural, this means yes, this, means no. You understand? We do these things that other people may not really understand. Oh, they just had a whole conversation and they just blinked their eyes 3 times. Okay? It's learning a language. So if you now approach it as, I'm going to learn the language, the Canadian language of feedback, then you start picking up what these words mean. That's it. So you started that already. You told me, oh, when they say, it's not my favorite, that means I hate it. All right. It's not my favorite equals hate. Now you know. Now you know. And so you start putting a little list together so that you could speak their language. That's what this is. Now, 2, if you're receiving feedback and you think it's, like I said, you could take it or leave it. But I always like to digest it. People, when they give me comments, I don't react immediately. People like, you just got promoted. And I was like, thank you very much. I'm like, yeah. You have to process it. I call it stop, think, translate. Stop, think, translate. Because you have to translate into your own language. what was said.
Mm.
Then if you're still confused, you ask them questions.
Okay.
Now you get their message. Fast forward, you get their message. And you're like, that was nonsense. Disregard. So the reaction needs to be somewhat delayed. Or you hear them, you translate, you go, they have a point. I'll implement 30% of it or all of it, depending on what it is. Because the receiver, you're the filter. You know who you are. Not everything someone says has to influence your behavior.
Mm.
Like my daughter not inviting me to the graduation. Yeah, I'm talking about it. And she's going to hear this and she's like, why are you talking about my business? Well, right? So it's up to you how you react to certain things. Because then you could say, that feedback was intended to, even though you heard the words, were to destroy my confidence. I'm just making stuff up. Or this person really wanted to help me. And ask questions. Well, by you saying it's not your favorite, are you saying that what would be your favorite? Would be a good question, right? What
Mm.
would be your favorite? What would your favorite look like? Speak in their language. Did I respond to you? Did I
Yes,
give?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I love this response because if I were to put nerdy language on this, it sounds like a lot of cultural intelligence and code switching authentically, right? And because the thing is, if we the more granularity we can with which we can see the world, the clearer the picture is going to be. So if we say, okay, I'm speaking English, they gave feedback, not my favorite means this literally, then we're going to be limited. But if we think about feedback as a distinct language, what does the language of feedback mean in this culture or with this person? Then we can make the adjustment. Because what often happens is that I think there has to be a balance. We have to be shaping the world to a certain extent, but then also accepting the world as it is and then making authentic adjustments within that. So if it's an interpersonal conversation, we could give them feedback on how they give feedback. Perhaps we could do that. Perhaps. The other thing is recognizing that a lot of times, especially when we think about organizations, there's a hierarchical nature of feedback where maybe your boss might not be receptive to your feedback about feedback. So that probably isn't realistic. But what is realistic is to say, okay, I see what this person says. I see what they mean. I can understand their vibe. I can understand their lingo, and I can make adjustments for this person in this context to get a deeper level of understanding. That's incredibly powerful. And so when it comes to these situations, when we're feeling like we can't really connect or understand, just treat it like a cultural immersion program. I am entering their world, and my goal is to understand. And when you think about it, then it becomes a fun exploration. Oh, that now you start to understand this person and you communicate in a different way. And then for me, I'm a weirdo, but I take pleasure a lot of times in knowing that there are people where other folks just cannot understand, can't get through to, can't connect with, and are constantly frustrated by. And then I can go have an easy conversation and they're like, how did you do that? How did you understand what they were saying? I took the time to immerse myself in their world and understand that sometimes the words that they use don't mean what they mean literally. They have a specific meaning for this particular person. And once you accept that, now the world becomes your oyster. Now these interactions become more fun than scary.
As an auditor, I actually, this is how, this is my nerdiness coming out now.
Yes.
I had a list on my computer with people's names and keywords if I want them to do stuff, keywords that I should use to get them to accept my audit findings. So I have I don't want to show a sticky note with people's names, and I have phrases that I parrot back, or I realize this is how they process things.
That's so good.
It's real. So you step back out of yourself. You're like, what are they saying? Like, yeah, you got to figure out, okay, what are they saying? More of a curiosity has as opposed to being annoyed.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it takes practice. This is not like, oh, I'm just going to do this tomorrow. It takes try. See, New York City, the city I love, is a great learning ground. You step out of your house, you are practicing immediately, dealing with traffic, dealing with people who are talking to themselves, people who are frustrated about life. That come to New York. I'm inviting all your people, all the people who are listening. Come to New York and use this technique. Then you'll start understanding New York is a great city.
Yes, I'll tell you this. My son Kai, when he got there, he was blown away. He's like, "This is a different planet that we're on." As a father, there were a lot of interesting conversations I had to have about about what he was witnessing. But you got
Uh,
to roll with the punches.
yeah, just they grow up fast. They grow up fast.
So true. Sabine, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming in. And before you go, let's do this because I know you have the audit practice, but you also
Mhm,
have the leadership competencies and everything that
mhm.
you do. Can you let the listeners know again the best way for them to connect with you and learn more about what you have to offer?
Well, there are two ways. LinkedIn, Dr. Sabine Charles. Guess what? My website, drsabinecharles.com. And on my website, you'll see the work that I do. Not only am I a speaker, I also provide trainings self paced because everyone's busy. So you can begin to build and elevate your voice and your visibility and add value. We have self paced courses, affordable. The other thing that I provide are workshops, corporate workshops, and also individual workshops. We have cohorts. And we step into working with what do you want to get out of this? Whatever this is for you. And my job, our job, is for you to get to that within that time frame. So it's a 2-day workshop with every other month. We call it implementation labs. Like I said, implementation labs, not podcast, not webinar, not I'm just going to check my emails while I'm listening and answering questions when they ask me. Implementation labs, where we implement the techniques that are necessary for you to get what you want. And then the third thing that I offer are retreats. I go around the world. We're having a retreat to Morocco. We're planning one to Belize. Again, it's about leadership, tapping into your greatness, tapping into your leadership MEQ. So you could find me on LinkedIn and I post every day on techniques. And then also, we have on my website, you could find information and my book of leadership MEQ, which is also in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. And all of my courses are in those 4 languages too. No barrier if you don't. So, my friend, if you want it in French or Spanish, it's available to you.
Amazing. Sabine, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.